Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of How To series from Canopy Community. As you know, How To series is a series of episodes with people, especially this year. We decided to have in these episodes members from our in-residence team. But for this episode, the June 23 episode, decided to bring in a very special guest, Ori. She's going to introduce herself in a few seconds. And today we are talking about how to collaborate with AI. AI is probably the hottest topic at the moment, and there's a lot of probably misconceptions, a lot of doubts, even some fear. On the other side, there's a lot of hope and a lot of wild dreams around AI. We're not here to solve them all, but we're here just try to discuss how can we use AI in a way that actually help us develop ourselves, develop our ability to innovate, and other things around that. I'm Pedro Guimarães from the Canopy Community in Residence team, and I'm going to start by asking Biraj, who is Biraj for those who still don't know?
Hey guys, lovely to be here. My name is Biraj. I am the executive coach in residence at Canopy Community, but also come with 20 years of tech experience, specifically in the quality assurance and testing space. So lovely to be here, and yeah, looking forward to discussing this topic.
All right, so Matt, who is Matt?
Hey, great to be here, everyone. So I'm Matt. I'm CTO in residence at Canopy Community. Very much a technologist at heart. Been in software development since 2001, and I've got very kind of close eyes on what's happening in the AI space. So looking forward to chatting about it today.
Awesome. And of course, Ori, who is Ori, our great and special marvelous guest today?
Hello, no pressure. Hi, my name is Ori, and I come from a tech background as well, but perhaps with a different kind of lens. So my specialty is business transformation, leadership, and change. And currently I work in customer service strategy. So that's what I bring to the table.
Awesome. So I have a first question to you all, but I'll start by asking it to Matt. Matt, is AI going to destroy mankind?
I would have to go with no. Ever the optimist. I think we should be. I think there's a lot of fear mongering around AI at the moment, and I do believe that it is probably the biggest significant kind of technological change that we've seen in the last probably 20, 30 years in some cases. So I think it is going to change a lot, but I don't think it necessarily is going to end the world. I think we should probably embrace it for what it is and try to kind of integrate it into our daily lives and routines to really help us. And that's how I believe it should happen. That's what I'm planning to use AI for.
Your comments on this, Ori, please.
I think it's a really interesting question, right? I don't think AI is at risk of destroying humanity, but I do agree with the point that Matt just made about fear mongering, right? And, you know, thinking about whenever there's been a really big technological advance, there's always been people who are doubters and are scared, right? So like, I'll never forget, I was reading once a story about the first steam engine train. And one of the big concerns was that they were worried that it would go so fast that it would cause brain damage, right? So there were protests and people kind of, you know, being really kind of shocked. And you think, well, now looking back, you think, okay, 40 miles an hour. Yeah, no, that's fine. But yeah, I think it's normal to be scared. And no, I don't think AI is going to destroy humanity.
And Rush, do you think it's going to be that bad?
No, not at all. In fact, I'd like to say, you know, AI, people should kind of see it as acceptance and inclusion, i.e. accept it's here, right? It's not even coming, it's here. And in some way, shape or form, you're going to have to start to include it in everything that you do. And kind of, as I mentioned, my background is in software testing. And I remember when automation was kind of the thing, and our industry as testers were like, okay, well, oh my God, we're doomed, right? Like automation is going to basically take over everything. Yet you still need people to think about the scenarios. You still need people to build that automation. You still need to have, you know, that kind of humanity angle to it, as you say. And I don't see this being any different, right? It's how do you start to use AI to help complement humanity as opposed to seeing it as a threat which is going to take over, because I think there's still going to be a place for both.
Right. Still on this dark side of the questions, a lot of people say this is going to destroy a lot of employment, and this is going to really disrupt, especially I would say middle classes. How do you see this, Viraj? Do you see this as a threat for jobs? Do you see this?
I think it's going to change employment, and as if we think about jobs 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and you think about the jobs now, and we think about the jobs in 20 years' time, there is a natural evolution. And I think that that's just going to continue. And I think that jobs are going to change based on the inclusion of AI. And we may not even know what some of those jobs are. I have 2 young kids right now, and, the jobs that they'll be applying for probably don't even exist right now. But those jobs are going to evolve over time. And yes, where it might be more sort of administrative heavy or kind of more manual focused, that could be something that AI will take over, but that's going to open opportunities and doors for other roles and other things that are going to have to complement AI. So I think employment is going to change and roles are going to change as a result of the introduction of AI.
Ori, do you see that happening, or is just wishful thinking?
No, I agree. And when thinking about how jobs are going to change, I feel like our focus should be on what are the things that only humans can do, right? What are the things that bring us joy? What are the things that, we can do in a really unique way that tech will never be able to emulate or copy? And surely those should be the things that we aspire to, right? And so let's stop thinking about jobs in terms of, oh my God, we're going to lose all this. Let's just think about actually what are the good jobs that we want our kids and our future employees and our friends in 20 years' time to be doing. Let's focus on those. And what are the jobs that maybe don't bring us so much meaning or maybe are a little bit more repetitive? Do we really need a human doing them? Question mark, right? So it's all an evolution.
I'll get back to some things that you just said, but I want to hear first, Matt, on coming from the tech side. Actually, all of you came from the tech side, but I think, Aaron, you are the most active on that area. Do you see AI impacting real jobs, real job descriptions, real activities of tech people? Or they're just developing tech tools, AI-related tools to some way?
So I do think it will have change. I think we'll only see that increase as AI develops and get. I think we're still actually in real terms in early days of what AI can achieve, and we're already seeing kind of massive advancements. So, for example, the team of developers that we have, they've been using GitHub Copilot for at least a year now. Some of them a little bit longer. And it's part of their daily kind of routine. So for anyone that's not aware, GitHub Copilot is kind of an assistant for writing code, but can actually learn from the code base that you're working in and suggest, it will kind of read the code. And if you're starting to write something, it will try and complete it for you, guessing what you might need. It's not always 100%, but actually it does write some of the more mundane kind of code that you'd need to write. It writes that really easily. And it's a massive productivity boost, and I think it will only get better and better as it learns more. So I think we will see a shift in kind of those titles of developers, and some of the kind of roles that were literally about kind of churning out boilerplate code. Those will probably be lost, and it will be more about kind of the ones where critical thought's needed about how you approach stuff. Things where AI, and I guess at its heart is really just kind of pattern matching and learning on kind of a data set that it's been trained on. So it can't really replace that kind of critical thought process that humans would go through when they're thinking about constructing or developing. So I think that's what I'd say from a technical point of view.
Right. All right, getting back to something you said, I would love to hear also Viraj on this. Because AI, and I agree, AI is a lot much more a helper than a menace. The thing is, as you said, there's a lot of people that still can't. They're not enough. I would say their ability to deal with tech is not, I would say, evenly distributed across the globe. And let's just focus on the developed world, just to make this more, bring fairness to this discussion. Do you see? Will we need to have a huge effort in retraining older employees or less techy employees so they won't lose the race before it starts? Or this is just going to become natural within organizations or even schools? How do you see this? Because I think the gap is going to become bigger and bigger every day unless someone does something, and we can't just wait or expect for people's initiative to do so. How do you see this, Hari?
So that's a really interesting question. I haven't thought about it much in terms of the practicalities. What I have been thinking about a lot is how are we going to train people on the ethics of AI, right? So it's not about how do you formulate your question or how do you formulate your prompt, but how can we encourage a good ethical approach to leveraging this technology? And yes, I do agree that it's evolving very quickly, and that perhaps if we don't seriously look at ways of training it soon, it could very much get out of hand, and if that will come at a cost. Will that cost then be offset by AI? I don't know, but definitely something to think about.
Gosh?
I think there's a level of education that is going to be required, and that could be education for that younger generation that are kind of moving into kind of that stage of life, or maybe those, as you say, kind of slightly older generation that maybe are a little bit afraid of technology. Because, as I say, I think we're going to see this in every shape and every form across every industry in some way, shape or form. So I think education definitely is going to have to be there. The education of the benefits of it. And I think, again, that going back to it's not your enemy, it's your friend in that respect. And so that people approach AI with the right mindset, I think is important. But, you think about that, the younger generation. And for me, as Matt said, we've only just started in this space, and the art of the possible can be quite scary. So educating people on what it is and what it can do, but also what you don't want it to do almost, I think is going to be really, really important, because it's just mind-boggling where this could end up in the future. And, not just the great things that it could do, but the bad things it could contribute to as well. And so that's something for me, I think that's really important from an education perspective as it starts to evolve.
And you, Matt, what do you think?
So I think it's a really interesting question, because it feels like there needs to be education around it, but at the same time, I think it needs to be sympathetically balanced so that we're still actually learning the raw skills that we need. So, for example, ChatGPT is very good at written communication. It can write things, in various different styles, tones of voices. And I'm not a particularly good writer, and it can write stuff. I use it all the time now because I'm not a particularly good writer, and it just means that I can produce things a lot faster. But I still wouldn't have wanted to be introduced to it at such an early stage that I didn't learn the fundamentals of how to communicate. And I think that's the balance that we need to have from an education point of view.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, what's really interesting is exactly that, where I think sometimes people are using it so much now that their form of communication isn't genuine anymore, i.e., it's not actually who they are, it's what the AI is presenting them to be. And that's actually quite sad, right? Because, as you say, there's a character and a personality that needs to be built. And usually, when we do business, people do business with people. And so, if you've got this amazing kind of written proposal and presentation that's actually been generated by AI, and then you meet that person and they're nothing like the proposal or the correspondence you've had with them, then that's a bit sad as well, right? So I think you're right. We have to let people build characters and build personalities and complement that. And for me, when I use something like ChatGPT, I use it as a starting point, but then you always have to put your own twist on it or your kind of character and personality around it, as opposed to just taking it verbatim and then just running with that, because I think that can be quite it's just not genuine then when you start putting people in front of people.
Still on well, it happens to me so many times in these episodes. After like 20 minutes, I have already questions for another 20 hours. But I'll stick to the plan. Still on this education side, I think that AI it's just another factor making even more relevant a huge change in education, which is moving to a system based on teaching hard skills and moving to a system where we actually focus on developing soft skills, because we have to create human beings, and a lot of things that we used to learn and amazingly are still taught at schools 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and that past all that time they're doing exactly the same. Even sometimes even I was in a recent discussion around education, and someone said 30 years ago the from a pedagogic standpoint, the techniques were better because it was prior to inventing PowerPoint. And I was like, what? And the person was, because with PowerPoint teachers just go, push some slides, say some things, 0 to none interaction unless the teacher is good, and class done, or kids leave the classroom and it's done. And so that person actually made me think of, well, maybe she's right. Maybe we're just moving backwards with technology. And this kind of collates with what you just said. ChatGPT and likes can create a better version of me, but then some way, sooner or later, my real avatar is going to meet the real avatar of the other individual, and we're going to clash. So do we need to do something really deep, at least a deep reflection regarding teaching? And not just, and I'm not just talking about schools, but I'm talking about training in companies. I'm talking about coaching in mentoring inside organizations. Do you need to rethink all this, or it's just going to evolve by itself because people tend to adapt and adjust? Ari, let's start by you on this one.
Gosh, that's a really interesting question. I think, how do we teach others to be human? Where do you start, right? I think my answer at this point, with the information that we have and in the 5 minutes that we got, would be that yes, it is very important that we invest in soft skills training, and that is already been recognized as one of the top skills that will be required. I think I was doing a study on empathy recently, and something crazy like 40% of companies foresee that in the next 4 years, empathy is going to be one of the top skills that they're going to be requiring. Flip side of it was that another study I was reading suggested that only genetics only dictate 10%, have 10% of an impact on how empathetic we are. So that suggests that it's a skill that can be learned, right? But it's not a skill that can be learned through reading. It's a skill that needs to be learned through practice. And this is where I think it's really interesting for us to think about what is the education of the future going to need in terms of giving us the skills of what it means to be a human being. Does that answer the question?
It definitely does. Matt?
Yeah, that's actually really interesting about empathy, because I think it's that kind of a human emotional response. But again, something that AI is not going to be able to do. It can simulate how it thinks, but it's not a human and it can't react to those situations. So I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about and a differentiator. I think from a kind of an education point of view, I think a lot of it may be to do with how it's positioned or how we position AI. And at the moment, I think because it's still such early in its infancy, we're getting some of the stories about kind of scaremongering, and we don't really know the potential, the possibility. And it's, I think if we can still bring it back and position it as a tool, as part of our tool chain as a human individual or organization, then that actually might position how we teach it and form some education around it. And then there'll be less kind of fear to deal with. And it's more about how do you utilize this tool as you would any other tool that's been developed in the last 10, 15 years.
And you, Biraj, your thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, I think awareness is important. I think we have to actively make people aware of this. I think if you naturally let it evolve, then everyone at some point will catch up, but it might be too late. By the time you're on the wagon, it's kind of already you've missed the opportunity for you as a person or your business or your organization. So I think helping raise awareness that this is here, and it's shocking because you speak to so many people and they are familiar with AI, but I speak to just as many people that still haven't got a clue about it. And the people that I'm speaking to are people that would hugely be benefiting from using it right now based on what they do, and they just haven't got a clue that it exists, right? So, maybe they are still, just oblivious to what's going on, but by just helping that awareness, you can just think of the speed and the efficiency of what they might be doing. And, the stuff that Matt was referring to in terms of Copilot, exactly that, right? It's there as an enabler to become faster and more efficient at what you're doing. Just those mundane kind of, as you say, boilerplate code that you would normally have to spend a bit more time thinking about can just be done for you, so that you can allow that thinking capacity to now be applied to something that genuinely needs that thinking capacity, as opposed to something that can just be done boilerplate for you. So awareness for me is really, really important. And if we can get that awareness across schools, across organizations, across communities, and learn from each other and share that awareness, then I think that's really going to be a positive thing.
Great to hear you say that, because to a certain extent, and humbly, that's part of what we're trying to do here today. We're trying to open the discussion, make people aware that they should be looking into this, not just because it may harm you, but especially because it may help you, and it does. I've been recently on a meeting with someone. We were having a conversation, and then it was amazing that he shared with me a few minutes later. All the meeting notes were taken. We're using an AI tool. It had like small videos of the most relevant things that were fully organized with the time, with the timestamps. So you could see the topics like a minutes, and you could just click and see phrases and videos. I was like, whoa, I want this. I need this. Because it's so easy. Just imagine there's something you say, okay, and you should hear Biraj on this. I just go there and send the video to Biraj, and it's done. And it gives the context and gives all, I would say, on first hand, without having to add work to me or generate possible communication problems. But so let's try to do this a little bit more. I think that all technology evolutions have solved, I would say, unneeded or repetitive tasks with the intent of generating more time for talent to be used elsewhere. And so we are, of course, this generates also some problems we discussed with the education, and don't leave people behind, but let's assume for now that is being taken care. And so now more and more we are having people having free time to do things that really add value, instead of spending that time doing things that could be done some in a lot easier ways, or cheaper or faster or whatever. Now, it all comes to, every time I use a tool, first, of course, I have to know tools, then I have to choose my tool, which starts by identifying my problem or my need. First part of the question, okay? How can I, on a simple way, some strategies that you have been actually using to see, hey, let me see if I have something to help me with this. Are you doing this actively, or you just like me bumping sometimes with things that someone shares? Hey, Dan, do you know this? It's marvelous, and then I'll go there and try. Okay, but are you doing this actively, or are you just reactively? Because this is booming every day, of course, as you know. And now we can start by Biraj, and I'll try to keep mixing the orders.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to be a little bit active. But again, this comes back to awareness, right? If you're not aware of AI, if you're not aware of what it can do, then you're not really going to actively be looking at all the various tools that can help you with that. But yeah, I heard recently that if you're just starting to use ChatGPT, you're already behind, because there's so many other things that are already out off the back of ChatGPT. That's not to say that ChatGPT isn't useful. It absolutely is, and people still use that. But the point is that things have already moved forward since ChatGPT. Yet those that were unaware come across ChatGPT first and foremost, just because it's more kind of maybe more common, I guess, or more talked about. And they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then they spend all of their time in that one tool and don't even think about researching all the other things that that could happen as well. So again, I think it comes down to your level of education, your level of awareness, and that will probably guide how active you are. Me personally, I wouldn't say, because I'm not day to day in the tech space, maybe not as active as someone like Matt maybe and his team. That said, I'm fully aware that there's other things out there, and so I'm kind of putting the feelers out there to see what might be useful for the work that I do.
Matt, and you, strategies?
Yeah, so I think it's probably a bit of a combination for me. So I think the organization that I work at, we've tried to be quite strategic about how we look at it, and how we can gain efficiencies through using it. And that was kind of a strategy for all of the development team to have Copilot, paid for Copilot licenses a year ago, before ChatGPT came on many people's radars, and that kind of AI became on people's radars. So that's not ChatGPT Copilot, but it's in the same kind of space. It's kind of machine learning, and I think that from that perspective, it's been strategic. I think from my own personal use cases, it's a bit of both. So I think there's an evaluation of what don't I enjoy doing in my role, and can that be offloaded to AI to do that safely and efficiently. And then also there will be just use cases that get thrown on at me on a daily basis, and I'll be halfway through writing something, and then I'll go, why am I writing this? I could just use a ChatGPT or kind of a writing service like that. So I think it's because we're so early stages, I think we're all finding use cases on a daily basis for it. So for me, it's a bit of a balance of kind of strategic and reactionary.
Right. Ori.
Well, I very much guide things by what I enjoy doing and what only I can do. So I literally have a list of like tasks that I really dislike, and I'm always looking for ways to not do them. So yeah, that's kind of been my process in finding the tools that I use. And the other good indicator for me, it's like if I have some deadlines that I'm consistently getting behind on, that usually gives me an indication of maybe that's not something that I really enjoy doing. This is something that I can delegate. No, it could be. Okay, cool. Let's find a tool.
I think a good strategy could be ask ChatGPT. Okay, which brings me to another question, which is prompt engineering. I think like all tools, the question starts with the problem, and we've been assessing, trying to understand this. Can we be is a minimal level of awareness, not just of the existence of this type of tools, but also the needs that we have. For example, I think Ori just gave a great tip, a list of the things I always tend to get late. So probably are things I should find something or someone to do for me. But the problem is, if you don't put the right questions, nothing, no one, no machine is going to give you the right answers. And I've seen a lot of, it's like early stage users of Google, for example, now they tend to put, I still have friends that are, I would say, less tech savvy, that are struggling with Google. And I say, man, you're just putting the right answers, the right questions, you never go there. So it's a lot easier. So it has like a training process of people understanding, if I'm looking for this end result, what is the right question I have to put? And this also occurs with ChatGPT and the likes. And of course, it also helps on selecting the right tool. So there is something one must do or try to train herself or himself or try to learn from or whatever to actually benefit. I would say maximize the benefit, but benefit on a decent way from these tools, which is going there and understanding how can I use this tool to give me the outputs I'm looking for. And I have some ideas around it, but I would love to start by Ori's. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's all about the question. And so two things jump to mind. So number one, context. So think about what is the context that would be really important in being aware of to get to the answer that I want or need. And then the other thing is, again, you can definitely ask ChatGPT, so or whichever other tool you're using, I very frequently will start a prompt by saying, in a minute, we're going to explore how to write, I don't know, a breakup email. What questions or what information do you need me to give you to make it really compelling? And then I let the AI ask me some questions, I fit them back, and then somewhere in between the two of us, we get to a good answer. That's just an example. So I do that quite a bit.
So you actually collaborate with AI. Lovely.
Yeah, I ask AI, what questions do you need to know? Yeah.
All right, asking questions to AI. I love that. Matt, do you ask questions or just request code?
No, so I think from how my interactions with AI are reasonably similar. And actually, since ChatGPT 4 and kind of the fact that there's now context within conversations and it knows everything that you've explained to it so far, that does mean that you get better results the more you actually give to it and put in. So, for example, there's cases where I've copied and pasted whole kind of swathes of text into the tool for it to understand that text, and then I can question that text. So it may be a manual on something, or maybe some documentation that I've given it. It will understand it, and I can ask it questions about it. So that's one way I've done it. And a use case that I did the other day, and this is very much. I think it's important to point out that it's still not perfect, and you still do have to have a good understanding of what you're trying to communicate, because it does sometimes give you back things that aren't true, which are sometimes called hallucinations. It will make stuff up if it hasn't got that mental model to actually kind of connect the dots. It will just make things up. But I gave it with ChatGPT 4 plugins, which is in beta mode at the moment. You can actually connect ChatGPT with other services, so it's not just trained on its data set from 2021. It can actually go off onto the internet, drag data back, and use those models to actually look at that data. So there's one of those models that allows you to go and look at websites. So I pointed it at the guidelines for writing an R&D tax claim, because in the UK we have kind of guidelines for writing R&D tax claims. So I pointed it at the guidelines of how to write an R&D tax claim. I prompted it with some questions and asked it to create me an initial draft of what an R&D tax claim might look like for high yield, based on very just high level some of the projects that we've worked on. And it did probably 60 to 70% of the work for me, and then it was just myself having to go and layer on top of the specific detail. But as a base, it did a very good job, and it was sticking within the guidelines of writing an R&D tax claim.
Nice. Josh, I'm already eliminating questions I would love to put.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to build on what the guys have said already, it's if you just ask it a question, then arguably, is it any different to asking that same question in Google, right? I think your approach to it has to be very different. And I love that kind of collaboration with AI, the conversation with AI. I think that's really interesting. Actually, what are the questions that you think are the best that I should be asking you? I love that tactic, actually. So I think it's a different approach, and therefore our prompts and our questioning has to be different as well. I think we have to be a little bit more clever in how we interact with it and what questions we ask it. Because if you say, oh, give me the top 5, blah, 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 then you could get those same top 5 from Google, and actually, you're really using it to its full capacity and advantage there. So there is definitely a different way of interacting with AI, I think, than just standard search engine. But that's going to come with time, and people are going to learn. And I think, again, just, I've learned something new there by asking, what questions do you think I should be asking? I'm going to try that next time I use that. And so,
same here.
Hopefully, yeah, absolutely. So hopefully, as people get more used to it, and people start to share their best practices with AI, I think obviously people will learn from that, and then people can take advantage of it.
And also, can I just make like a super quick point on that, on the prompting? I think that it's very easy to underestimate the importance of being an interpreter, right? And being able to go from like end result and conception, there's like an in-between, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bit that only a human can do, right? So like I hear a lot this, I work a lot in creatives, right, and advertising, and I see so many agencies being like, oh my God, is ChatGPT going to take over our job? And I'm like, well, no. When was the last time a client gave you like a really clear order of what they needed, and it was actually what they needed? And they go like, oh, no, never. Okay, well, then there we go. You're there to interpret what it is that they need. So yeah, that was a good point that I wanted to make there.
That's a great point, the interpreter. And bridging that with Matt's reference to data sets, please, and this to a personal message to those that are listening to this and are not so aware of all this. ChatGPT was trained with data sets from 2021, which probably do not include the end of COVID, war in Ukraine, rising interest rates, rising inflation. So depending on the types of subject that you are using ChatGPT for, probably it's going to miss some parts. So Google would be, I would say, more accurate and more updated source of information. So don't, in short, don't use it like Google. Google exists, it's great. Use it for other things that we can't do. And but then again, do it the way it makes more sense to you. But there's a dark side on this, because if you are not aware and you are not experienced enough, probably we will take for true everything that the machine is telling us, including things that are on those data sets that were not fundamentally true or sufficiently scrutinized or whatever. And which brings me for me for the biggest and on the very beginning of this conversation, Ari mentioned ethics, and even today I saw a news saying that ChatGPT is being sued in the States because of copyright infringements. Sooner or later it's going to happen. It was expected, I think, but then it's all about who is feeding the beast. So if you are using an AI tool that was fed with some intent, probably the result you're going to get is going to be biased for all that. How can we, if there are solutions, how can we, adding to be aware of these, how can we keep collaborating with AI, keep using AI to enhance ourselves and enhance our ability to do things and bring value to the world, but do not be so fragile on being misused by people with intent. Let's start by Biraj with this one.
Oh gosh, so much to unpack there, I guess. I mean, can you maybe specify specifically what you're looking for? What are you looking for in terms of my sort of
people
take on that?
when we start to use something, we tend to believe in it if it solves our problems. But sometimes the thing that is behind that not be as accurate.
I mean, ultimately, and that's why I think, you know, earlier I mentioned that you kind of have to use it as a basis and a foundation, but you still have to add your layer onto that, right? If you're using it for something you know nothing about, and then you take it verbatim, that's dangerous because of everything that you've just explained there. If you're using it in an industry or a subject matter that you are already aware of, and you're using it as a tool, then what it spits out, hopefully you've got some initial knowledge of to say, yeah, well, that's pretty accurate, or actually, no, that doesn't even make sense at all, and therefore I need to adjust it accordingly. So, you know, I tend to use it for the things that I work within on a day-to-day basis, and use it as an enabler, as opposed to using it as something that is just completely new to me, and then I take that verbatim. Because as you say, the data sets are not rich enough at this stage. Now, it will get there at some point, and that data set will become richer and richer and richer. And, you know, I think our trust in the output will get stronger and stronger over time, but I'm not sure we're fully there yet. I don't know. Or will we even get there? I don't know, because the data and information is always going to increase, right? So I can see Ari's shaking her head there, because I think I know where you're going, but go ahead.
Matt, can we?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting topic, and I'm not sure we're actually going to get to a place of complete safety ever, but I think we're going to need some help along the way, probably in the form of regulation around AI, and I think it will come in one way, shape, or form, and it probably will put some brakes on the speed that AI is evolving at the moment. But I think it probably will make it safer to use for kind of the general public and the people who are not experts and have a deep understanding of how these data sets are built. For example, I was at the AI Summit in London a couple of weeks ago, and there was a really good panel event. And it was far beyond the level of AI, but I know as a technical person, and professionals within the realms of AI working on large language models, and they were saying there's a technical limitation now really on hardware and how big these models have got. There's just a limitation on hardware. So what in the kind of the spirit to move as fast as they feel they need to move, which is literally things changing on a weekly basis within the AI space, they're actually now quantizing their data sets, so their models are much smaller and can run on lower amounts of hardware quicker. But in that quantizing process, what they really do is stripping away the edge cases, because it's kind of a lower, kind of a less data to train the model on. And it's normally those edge cases that are actually going to be the things that you do want to capture when it comes to AI, because they're going to be where biases and inequality and those kind of underrepresented groups, they're going to be the edge cases in a data set. So you really want those there, but it's those that are at threat of being stripped away through this drive to kind of iterate so quickly. So I feel like we're going to get to a point where where some brakes need to be applied and some regulation needs to be applied to kind of make sure that we don't do anything that's actually damaging to, you know, the data that we're providing people to use.
Regulations, another hour of conversation. Have to set a new episode. Ari, your comments on this, please.
My comments on this is that when it comes to data, you know, by definition, large language models want to focus on quantity, but really what we should be focusing on is accuracy. And historically, the problem with accuracy is that stories are told by
The
people
winners.
with privilege. So there's definitely some gaps there, and I don't know what the answer is, if I'm honest. And this is where I think, going back to that question about ethics and critical thinking and philosophy, the things that only humans can do, is really, really important.
Is it true? Because I've seen poetry, I've seen art. Some say harmful code has been developed.
Mm.
Are we still the sole owners of creativity as we describe it on those, I would say, on those outputs, a painting, a book, or whatever?
I think in the context of originality, yes. But that's just my view. So the model can only repeat things and rehash them, really.
Matt, have you ever seen harmful code being generated by?
No, not in my experience. I'm sure there probably are cases of it, or maybe not, obviously intentionally harmful, but has been trained on patterns or practices that may have vulnerabilities or security flaws. And there was obviously a lot of news around Copilot when it was first launched, because it was quite clear that Microsoft was training it on private repositories as well as public ones. So code that shouldn't be in the public domain was actually fed in to the language model training. And so there's, I think really not a direct experience of it, but I'm sure it does happen.
And have you, Biraj? Are we still the only creative entities in the planet?
I think so. I mean, the very fact that you have to teach AI means someone already knew it before AI did, right? And therefore, that originality, that creativity that I think a human brings to the table, I don't think AI will ever kind of be able to do that. And I think that's why, going back to what I said at the start, where the introduction of automation, people were scared that that's going to take over kind of people's roles. Well, those people are still in roles right now, but their role has changed because they're now using that creativity and imagination that only a human can bring necessarily, and adapting it to complement AI as opposed to kind of just being one or the other. So I think, and I think AI will never overtake humans completely, and there's always going to be a place for that.
Okay, sadly we finished our time. I just have time for a question that allows you to give like almost one sentence answer. Of course I can do two, and to all of you. And so the question we're going to start by Biraj now is, summarizing everything we've discussed. I would like to hear one suggestion, one real tip, one useful thing that someone that is listening to us, hopefully is more aware today. How can that person can collaborate with AI? How to collaborate with AI?
I'm going to go back to AI being acceptance and inclusion. So my kind of final words on this would be: accept that it's here, accept that it's going to be forming part of what you do in some way, shape, or form, and start to think of ways in which you can include it for the benefit of your business, your role, your lives, because it's here, it's not going anywhere, and we're going to have to learn to use it in the best way possible. So hopefully today's session has given people some more awareness, and now they can use this as an opportunity to go and find out more about how AI might be able to benefit them in their businesses and their organizations.
Thank you, Biraj. Ori?
I think my top tip would be to make no mistake, you're the one that's driving.
Amazing. Matt, bring us home, your tip.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a combination of everything that's been shared. I think it's really learning to collaborate with AI, picking the tasks that you don't actually like doing and seeing if they can be offloaded to AI. And almost holding AI to account. So not just verbatim copying everything that it gives you. It does need a sense check. It does need some thought process around it still. It's not just a a prompt and copy job. It does need some thinking around it. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Awesome. And this ends up this month's episode of How to Series from Canopy Community. I hope you've enjoyed and you have had the opportunity to take from here useful tips, practical tips, and especially I hope the degree of awareness around all this has increased at least a centimeter. That would make me feel that we achieved our first goal. If you would like to chat around this topic or other topics with our in-residence team, just see at this post the link to reach anyone from our in-residence team at Canopy Community. I would like to thank you all, starting by Ori. Thank you so much for being available to be here today. Biraj, it's always a pleasure to have you here. And of course, Matt, it's an amazing opportunity to hear opinions on all this. Hope you enjoyed. See you next month. And let's see if in 30 days you've tried doing something with AI to actually improve something you're doing, or at least reduce things that you don't want to do. Enjoy. Have a great month. See you next month.